Right on. All right. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Sweeter After Difficulty podcast. My name is Randy Highsmith. I'll be your host today. And with me, as always, you know him, you love him, our regular guests, Jordan Lopez and Chris Anderson. How you doing today, boy?
Hey, Randy. Hey, Chris.
Doing good. Doing good.
Excellent. All right. So we have a really cool subject today. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode that dropped last week. A really fun discussion, just listening back to it and kind of the process behind the process, right? So I hope you enjoyed that. Today we're going to kick right into it with the quote master general himself, Jordan Lopez, to bring us a quote about, what is it?
It's about convenience. So the quote is, convenience is the gateway drug to entitlement. It drains people of their empathy because it fosters the illusion that they can proceed through life without hardships. This makes it harder for them to imagine others who are facing hardships. By Steve
Yeah.
Olin.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a big one, and it's something that we talk about a lot outside of the show, and so it felt like a good time, especially after last week's conversation. It felt like a good time to start talking about a little bit about convenience. There's a lot of words in here. There's a lot of this is actually one of the longer quotes that we've used so far, but because of that, I think there's a good foundation for a conversation in there. So I'm going to have actually, because it's so long, Jordan, I'm going to have you read it one more time, if you don't mind, and then we will dive right into it.
Sure. Convenience is the gateway drug to entitlement. It drains people of their empathy because it fosters the illusion that they can proceed through life without hardship. It makes it harder for them to imagine others who are facing hardship.
Yeah. So imagining others who are facing hardship of any kind or being able to feel it for them is commonly known as empathy, right? So there's a couple of big words in there. Convenience, we had entitlement, we had empathy, and we had hardship. And I think that's probably a good place to start is by getting into a little bit of, well, first of all, when you hear this quote, how do you feel about it? Do you agree with that concept? Do you agree with some of it or none of it? How did you feel when you first heard this?
I kind of struggle with this one a little bit. Like, there's pieces of it that I like, especially given the conversation that we had just a couple weeks ago about
Mhm.
convenience. And I think the thing that I'm struggling with here is like the notion of creating a binary. Like, convenience is either terrible
Mhm.
and you can't withstand hardship, or you just fully disagree. And I feel like I don't fully disagree with everything in here, but I'm definitely struggling with the notion of like all convenience is a negative.
Yeah. So, Jordan, anything to add to that?
I'm trying to kind of break it down in my mind. So convenience is the gateway drug to entitlement. So entitlement is what we're talking about. Entitlement then drains people of their empathy because entitlement fosters the illusion that people can proceed through life without hardship. Entitlement makes it harder for them to imagine others who are facing hardship. The last sentence kind of bums me, but when people are entitled to things, like you just have kids, right? Your kids are always entitled to things because there's their kids and they have no idea what life is really like, right? So I see that with my kids, like, oh, I'm owed this, or I need this, or it's not fair that I don't have this kind of a thing. And I definitely see that, and it definitely drains empathy because you think you're owed things from people.
So, I think that's a great point. And Chris, when you hear that like description of it, right? Especially when we read the first sentence,
Hmm.
convenience is a gateway drug to entitlement, right? So I think I feel a little bit about what you're saying, right? Like I didn't initially hear that, but then I understood it, your concern when you voiced it. Um, but if we think about let's talk for a second about a gateway drug,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? Is a gateway drug always a bad thing? See, because that's where I think we're talking, right? Like that might be a little bit of where that thing lies for you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess when you frame it that way, like potentially no, right? Like it gets obviously into, um, drugs or alcohol. If you're okay in moderation, then it doesn't like that gateway drug doesn't actually turn into a full-blown addiction. And that's not true for everybody, right? Um, so maybe that's the implication. Like if in moderate doses and having been earned, convenience doesn't necessarily lead to
Sure. So let's talk then about if we're classifying convenience as a gateway drug, what is it that makes it dangerous? And if we compare it to like the drug and alcohol, right, association that you made, which I think is absolutely the logical way to do it. I mean, the terminology is there, it's baked in. Uh, what's the danger then in convenience, or, as a gateway drug?
I think I don't know. Like convenience in what way, right? Like it's convenient to have food in the refrigerator. It's convenient to have clothes. I don't have to make my own clothes or
Well, I
cut
think
my
those
own.
are perfect
Yeah,
examples, right? So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's convenient to have food in your refrigerator. So,
yeah,
what was it before that?
yeah. Inconvenient.
Right? I mean, like, well,
Difficult.
and so we say inconvenient, and then this is what I thought was so interesting about this, right? Because we would say the negative of convenient would be inconvenient. Inconvenience, I think, is the breeding ground for finding convenience, right?
yeah,
It's the hardship that you don't want to have to overcome. So you find a way to not have to overcome it, right? And then that's why I think this is so interesting. I think the gateway to entitlement, because we haven't even got into entitlement yet, but I think
Yeah.
that's gonna be like a big part of the conversation. Um, but first, I want to, because, okay, so a quick analogy. I watched the recent miniseries 1923, which is like it's one of the offshoots of the Yellowstone series, I
that's
guess.
mm,
They did 1883 and then they did 1923. And, so it's set in 1923 in rural Montana. Like they have a stone and wood cottage out in the middle of just the
mhm,
horrific, hellish
yeah,
winter landscape of, northern Montana. And um in one of the scenes, they're talking about what they call mod cons, right? They're modern conveniences. So the one she mentions is a washing machine, something where it's a machine where you take your clothes and you dump them in with some soap and then it washes them for you. You're not beating them on a rock for an hour or whatever inconvenient way you had of doing
yeah,
laundry before that. Um, but then the husband says, well, it's not just about getting a washing machine, right? Then you have to run electricity out here. There's a lot to it, right? It changes one little convenience can drastically change the overall outlook of things. And I think that's where you end up with a slippery slope, right? Because now you're in this place all of a sudden where a washing machine is a given, right? You have a washing machine, you have a clothes dryer, you have a refrigerator that holds food, you have, you know, machines that govern the air temperature and the cleanliness of the air. You have hot and cold water, you have, like inside, you have all these things and they are incredibly convenient to have. And I think the conversation is even more impacting to me right now because for some of you that probably or maybe don't know, 4 years ago I moved into a 17-foot travel trailer. My wife and I moved into it and we're living on property out of this trailer. uh we don't have running water, right? We don't have plumbing. We don't use the shower in the in the trailer. We have built a life out of more inconvenient ways of doing things that we just took for granted as convenient when we lived in a house. Um, I've found that it's just an adjustment, right? Most of these conveniences that we have in our life right now, we've had since I was born, right? I've never lived in a situation where there wasn't a world where indoor plumbing was a thing, you know, or refrigeration was a thing or whatever.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, I did live in a world where there were no cell phones. And so I think that's another part of where this conversation goes, right? Is
Mhm.
the advancements in technology. But in terms of those things, right? Not having to go hunt for our food and then find ways of preserving it long enough for our family to consume it, and then before it runs out, having to go, you know, acquire it's a different life, right? So that's I think where I wanna go with the convenience conversation is, how do you feel like in the light of that kind of a context, how do you feel that has shaped or changed the way that we live as a society? Do you think it's been positive or negative, or what are the pros and cons, I guess?
Well, it's a lot of population growth, right? Because with all the modern conveniences, drugs and vaccines and vaccinations and everything like that, you don't have the people, have half the population you would now, right? I don't know. It's convenient to have food. It's convenient. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Alone, where they stick people out in the middle
Right.
of nowhere and people make it like 40 days, like by themselves. It's like, okay, well, if you add another person to it, you can make it a little bit longer. But like, once you start having to actually make your own shelter and eat your own, find your own food, it gets to a point people are losing vast amounts of body weight, like really quickly. Like half
Yeah.
their body
Right.
weight, a third of their body weight's gone in a month. It's like, oh, that's not a good thing. Like, I kind of like certain modern convenience. I like not having to walk everywhere or ride a horse everywhere. Like I kind of like my truck, and I like to get around and actually not be stuck within a 5 mile radius of my house all the time. Right, or flying across the country to visit family and friends, and or cell phones or video in video podcasting. Right, we're
Right.
other half of the country.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know. It's just
and certainly there's I mean, that definitely it adds a level of enjoyment,
mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah,
you have a lot more options for how your life can look or where it can be or
yeah. I don't know. I think that people like. I think was it that comedian Pat Oswalt kind of talks about it. Like his dad's like idolizes the old west, and then he's like, "You be giving birth to a baby like in a birthing trough." Like, like no, no, give me my hospital. Yeah, I want my healthy babies. Yeah, like I
well,
get,
you
I
know, and there's obviously there's a bigger
yeah,
conversation about it, but,
yeah,
you know, we are also we take for granted that certain things are just safer or better because that's the way that they've done them our entire life, right? Not to
yeah,
say that a hospital is 100% the better way to deliver your child, but it
yeah,
certainly it gives you instant access to doctors and nurses in case there's a
yeah,
problem. But I think that's the gist of it, right? Like I say it all the time. We prep for the thing that we think is the most likely outcome, right?
mhm,
You want to have a trained medical staff at hand when you have your kid.
yeah,
But that is a convenience, right? Because it used to be a doctor coming to your house in the middle of the night, or
yeah.
whenever the, you
Hopefully,
know,
yeah,
Yeah. If they were like within shouting distance, you know.
yeah,
yeah. Mm. So So how then do you think if we take the statement at its value that you know, convenience is the gateway drug to entitlement, how is that? What makes it the gateway drug to entitlement?
yeah,
I think for me, I read that, especially given like what you guys were just talking about, through the sense of like overcoming hardship or having to work through building a process to do something, right? Like, the reason Jordan, or no, sorry, Randy, you mentioned the 1923 example. Like, I think the reason why it's an apt discussion is because, you know, the female character who's complaining about having a washing machine and having that be a thing is that she's got the gift of hindsight. Like she knows how hard she's had to work to
mhm,
wash clothes and how critical that is part of her daily life. And for people who never have to do that, they're going to be entitled to clean clothes from now on. And so, in that perspective, I think it's hard to empathize, especially if you're someone who's never had to go beat your, you know, shirt on a rock in a stream. You know,
right, yeah,
like I don't know. I've never done that. I don't know what that's like. But as a gateway drug, that's where I like, it goes back to my initial objection. I'm like, I don't think that that harms my ability to empathize with folks who are survivalists or who live off grid and, elect to do things in a certain way because it brings them honor and value. Like, I think that's awesome.
So let me ask you this then. Oh, sorry, Jordan. Did you want to add to
But
that?
the hard thing is though, is that we're still acting like that people don't like people in the world right now live without
Right.
like in Africa. Like
Yes.
I've been to Africa,
Totally.
I've been to South America. Like there's people who live in places they don't have washer and dryers and don't have all the modern
100%.
conveniences and
Right.
they live their lives and they live and die and generations go on, right? So it's very much a Western kind of perspective. Because
Mm,
yeah.
So when I think about entitlement, right? Obviously, if I
Mhm.
take it just at face value, I'm thinking that you are entitled to something, right? You feel like something is a given, that you should be on the receiving end of that. But let me ask you this, Chris, and I want to talk a little bit about take a side step because you just took a camping trip with your family.
yes, I
Um
did.
and, I wanna talk a little bit about it, 'cause I'm really curious to hear how it went.
Yes.
But also, it got me thinking about you and about the situation in general, right? The conversation we were having when I
Yeah.
was thinking about this because and I wanna ask you a really direct, like, honest question, right?
Yep.
If your supply of food went away today, do you possess the skills to go acquire more food for you and your family?
I have thought about this way more over the past couple of years than I ever have previously in my life. And the
Yeah,
short answer is no, I
yeah,
don't. Right? Like,
yeah.
if we're in hunter-gatherer mode, and this is kind of what like my MO or my opinion on it now is that like if we're in hunter-gatherer mode, it's the zombie apocalypse, and the Costco warehouse has been fully ransacked. Like,
Right.
we're gonna be in trouble. And so I either need to get some survival skills and acquire them, to deal with that eventuality, or I need to be able to build a network that offers something to trade, something that is necessary to the people who do have the means and the resources. And in that environment, I need to accept that the power dynamic is now vastly different, right?
In
Like
and
I
yeah, and
am,
I think I mean, I think that's 100% accurate, and, so then the next question would be, if you're counting on that network to control the shift in the power
mhm,
dynamic, being unequipped, how much of a voice do you feel like you're gonna have in that council?
not much, not
And the
much.
only reason I'm asking that is because I think it is so relevant to the topic of
Yeah,
entitlement.
for sure.
We take for granted that those things are there because there's this supposed safety or social network, right? Or safety net that's spread out for us to land on. Like social programs
Yeah,
or even, food donation programs or shelter
right,
or, whatever
right.
it is that, that people need, your basic needs. And so when we start stripping down what we actually need versus things that are just there and are only relevant in our lives because they offer comfort.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of where I'm curious. So I want to take that as the launching pad into your camping experience. Um, and I just want to, if you're willing to talk about
I
it,
totally am. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'd love to hear about just how the whole thing went for you.
It very much applies to the specific quote for today. So, dear listener, you may not know that I'm not the outdoorsy type. I'm not outside hiking and camping and sleeping on rocks for fun. And so, because of that, we decided, you know what, we're going to go camping. I mean, there's a group of friends of us that go the end of every summer with all of our kids and stuff. And we picked quite possibly one of the easiest camping locations in California. It's this beautiful place called Cassini Ranch off the Russian River, very
Mhm.
family camp oriented. And I had texted Randy and Jordan before I left saying, hey, send me your best, camping tips real quick. We're heading out the door. And Randy sent me a great summary of how to build a fire. And
Yeah.
for someone who's only ever used like Duraflames and gas flues before, that was like I was like the king of the campsite. I mean, our fire was going, well into into the midnight hours. We had the best s'mores.
Ah,
Um,
amazing.
and it was really funny because everyone was like, Chris, I didn't think you ever went camping before. And I'm like, yeah, you just pick some stuff up over time.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it was good, but it definitely opened my eyes. It's a once a year thing that we do. And in that short time frame of just 2 days, um, it's enough of a nuisance to go, oh, well, like not being able to take a shower when I want, like, is annoying. Now, if I was out there for 2.5 weeks, my perspective would shift dramatically, I am certain. We had raccoons invade our campsite on the first night at 4 a.m. and they made off with our breakfast, which was great. So learn that lesson about making sure that the
Oh,
food is.
sorry, I forgot to mention that in the text.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So my wife and I were like up at 4 a.m. We're like, you go out there. No, you go out there.
Dude, I was camping one time and I had somebody had a light on in their campsite and this was when I was still mostly camping in tents. And so I could see the silhouette, right, like, of anything that went by. And all of a sudden in the middle of the night, I see the silhouette of a raccoon walk up right next to my tent. Like I could feel it brushing the tent, right? And then I just hear this like crinkling noise, and I see it literally opening a bag of our chips and starting to crunch them and eat them right next to me. I was like, "Hell no, dude! Like you can have the chips, but you need to go crunch them somewhere else. I'm trying to sleep."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Super good. Raccoons are a nuisance.
It was really funny. I mean, we had a blast. I definitely want to do it more. We want to tent camp more. But it
We
was
need to
one of
go
those.
hard camp too. Let's go do some survival camping. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll work our way up to it. Buy
Uh,
me a little hanging shower, and then we'll be good to go.
no one wants to camp with me. I don't understand this. It's not.
Your camping is like Jordan, doing Murph and unicorn rolls in the same day.
Well, Randy, you don't wear pants when you're camping. That's what people don't realize.
Well, Uh, yes, I do
Season
wear
on
pants when I'm camping.
Alone, Naked and Afraid.
Yeah, do not let Jordan lie to you. I wear pants when I'm camping. Although, a lot of the guys that I camp with when we do these like deep woods, minimalist, they bring like packs that weigh 40 or 50 pounds, and mine traditionally weighs like 20 pounds. I take very little with me in, you know, um, because I mean it's just the longer you have to walk through woods with that heavy pack on, the less likely you are to keep
Yeah.
going or
Well, and then the interesting thing is too, it's like once you start kind of thinking in that perspective, like the meaner you get too. Like there's no more nicety. Like if it's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
survival situation, there's no more nicety.
yeah.
And if you talk about like survival, you're like, oh yeah, all your food's gone. Okay, do my neighbors have food? Because that's
Right.
where I'm going. Yeah, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go hunt a deer.
Yeah.
I need to
It
be at my
got so
neighbor's house at
bad
2
that we
a.m.
had to walk
Yeah,
all the way across the campsite to the general
yeah,
store to go
yeah.
get more food. Right? Like that's
I remember
not
like
this,
even yeah, I remember like during COVID where people are like all concerned about stuff and
toilet paper.
getting access to food. I remember talking to somebody. I'm like, you as you can still get to your car, it's not that bad. I'm like, if it gets really bad, my friends and I will have balaclavas on and we'll meet you outside of Costco
Yeah.
and we'll take your stuff from you.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to the other person's like eyes wide. I'm like, you don't know how bad things will get before I
Yeah.
start not feeling right with my family. And
Yeah.
it's like
It's
it's
one
a
of those,
different
if you
world.
take a real survival class or,
Yeah.
anybody that does real like self-defense, they're
Hmm.
going to tell you, the majority of your supplies are going to come from the people that are down, right? Like
Yeah.
somewhere.
Picking
God,
up
So,
100%.
granny at
There
Costco.
is
You're not
yeah.
getting
there
that stuff. Yeah.
like the only truism in nature is that when convenience is gone,
Hmm.
violence will win. It's
Yep.
true in the animal kingdom. It's been true for tens of thousands of years in human
Yeah.
populations. Like there is no better technology when you're not able to go to the grocery store and society's in full chaos. Like,
I think that's exactly where I want to go with this
Hmm.
because I feel like maybe some of those conveniences are given to us to intentionally to be a gateway drug to entitlement,
Mhm.
um, so that we end up a complacent and weakened society, right? I mean, if we ended up if you had only 1 out of every 10 people in a society that actually even possess the skill to go, find food or make shelter or build a fire or whatever without modern tools and conveniences. In the kind of a situation where you end up in a scarcity situation, then it just shifts the entire balance of what society is, right,
Mhm.
immediately. Jordan's talked about, a couple of books, the there's all kinds of stories that you can read about what actually would happen a minute after,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
kind of crazy thing takes place. And if you look at the statistics of how fast grocery stores would empty out, I know that like a lot of the guys that I would talk to about, survival stuff early on were like, well, yeah, I got 22 or I got bow and arrow. I'll just go out and hunt squirrels. And I'm like, well, what do you do when you go into the woods and you see your neighbor walking out with 20 squirrels in his hand and there's nothing in the trees, like
Yeah.
um the woods are going to quickly clear of small game, once the
Yeah.
grocery store is closed. And then you're talking about a completely different life. So entitlement is I think is a scary thing, and I think it's become a really prevalent thing in our society. When we talk about how that starts to drain us of empathy, that's probably how it happens, right? It probably starts to tie into me or you. Is that how you read that same thing, or do you have different thoughts about that concept?
I think so. Whenever you say entitlement, I think and we're flirting right now with politics, and it's very interesting to me because a few of us have a little bit different views in politics,
Sure.
but like entitlement programs and
Right.
stuff like that.
I didn't even think about that.
That's my
Yeah.
first thought when you say entitlement. I'm like entitlement programs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people who get
Interesting.
free food or free childcare or free education or free cell phones or free. Half the country doesn't pay federal income tax, and I start talking about all these little things. You're like, okay, well, I pay income tax and you pay income tax. It's just like these little weird things.
Hmm.
It starts creating an us versus them perspective with a lot of people. We start talking about entitlements versus not. Like, what's that Ronald Reagan quote? It's where the worst words are like, "I'm from the government. And I'm here to help."
Yeah.
And it's just
Right.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just entitled. I start talking about entitlements and people being owed things and people being entitled to getting something for free.
Yeah.
It increases the value of something when you're not having to
Yep.
work for it.
Totally agree.
It's also drawing from a limited pool,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like eventually there's not you don't have enough resources, right? If not everyone is working to build the resources back up, but everyone is draining them.
Yeah. With participation trophies, right? It's almost another version of entitlement where everybody gets a trophy, everybody's a winner, everybody feels
It's
good about
kind of one.
themselves. Yeah.
And
But go ahead, Chris, because
yeah,
I'm
that's kind of where my mind went was like
Mhm.
the notion of just because you're here, you're going to get a pat on the back.
Yeah.
You did a good job. And for me, like, yeah, I totally agree that, entitlement creates an us versus them perspective by nature, because now you're looking over at what the other group has or doesn't have and making judgments about how you should live your life based on that information. Like, well, do they deserve it? Well, they don't deserve it, so now I'm angry, so now I want to do something about it. Well, like, I don't know. It's just I think entitlement at a base is just the absolute absence of perspective. There's just none.
and if you so I think here's the scariest part, right? Because I feel two ways about helping people out, right? Number
Mhm.
one, I think we should help people out. I don't think it should be mandated that we have to help people out. I think people should help other people out as part of being fellow humans
Good
on this
humans.
planet, right?
Mhm.
I feel like that's a thing, but it's not my place to enforce that. That's just my feeling, right? The other part is I get really scared because I go, what happens? So we'll take an entitlement program, whatever. But let's say that money goes away or it's no longer available. And people have lived on an entitlement for their entire life.
Mhm.
What do they do? What can they do? They don't have the skills to go acquire more resources, right? And then now they haven't even trained themselves to be able to provide for themselves like the basic things that you have to survive, right? Once the things that you cannot live without are contingent on someone else providing that, what happens if they don't provide it?
Do you, is this question based in the context of permanence? Like a state, like a single switch, like a person who's receiving an entitlement in this example has and will always, or is there the notion that they are endeavoring to get out of the necessary lifestyle that provides them that entitlement?
I think it probably depends on which one it is, right? If we're talking about a gateway drug to entitlement and about how that starts to drain empathy, what
Hmm.
we're ultimately talking about is an increasingly self-centered view of ourselves and of our society and once you are in a place where your primary function is selfishness, right? Because we all have an underlying selfishness that has to be there as part of our survival instinct, right? We have to think about ourselves. Ultimately, when you get down to a certain point, your body's starving. It's only thinking about not starving to death, right? So you can't. That's not what I'm talking about. I
Right.
think what I'm talking about is the things like, you know, so for instance, it's a funny thing, right? But the first thing I did when I bought our trailer was I took out our microwave and I took out our toilet and I put in a composting toilet. And everybody goes, "Why'd you take the microwave out? Like that's you're cooking in a trailer." I'm like, "Well, I don't like microwaved food. I don't think you should be microwaving your food. Like I don't agree with that. Like I don't like it and I
Eh,
don't want a microwave oven in my small living space. I don't want
right.
it there, right?" But part of having a composting toilet is you have to take out your own waste at some point. So daily, I have to take a bucket out of my trailer full of pee and dump it out because I don't have because there's no other way to do it unless I fill up my tanks and then I would have to take my trailer out every week and go
Mhm.
dump my tanks somewhere, right? And I don't want to do that. Eventually you have to take the compost out, right?
Mhm.
Like so there's a which I'm not trying to be graphic with it, but there's a hands-on face to face with the reality of even your basic functions,
Yeah.
living.
Convenience, Randy, not
It,
pooping in a hole.
Right.
right,
Totally.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Um, my life isn't worse for that.
Interesting.
It's not harder for that. It's just different for that.
Mhm.
I wonder, let me ask a question then. Is it
Please.
possible to feel entitled and empathy at the same time?
I think it is. But this is where I think this quote eventually goes, right? And this is why I think gateway could easily be substituted if we took the gateway drug analogy out and we said convenience is a slippery slope to entitlement.
Mm,
Because to me, it's that first step downward on a slope that's slippery and you end up before you know it down in a pit of entitlement. Right? Like you took one little step towards a convenience because it would be easier for you and then you ended up in a place quickly because you enjoy that convenience is so convenient, right? That you don't even bother trying to find another way to do things anymore. There can't be a better way because this is so easy and so little taxing on it. I think
mm,
it's incredibly difficult to crawl out of a pit like that when it keeps coming, right? Like you every day something's provided to you. Like every day I go in, um, you know, let's say I go out to my bike and I turn on my motorcycle and it starts, right? so I take for granted that it's going to start, and I leave at the same time for work every day because I know how long it takes me, right? Eventually, I go out there and my battery's dead, and now my whole schedule's thrown off. This is a stupid, innocuous example, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah.
but I count on the convenience of it just going to be starting when I go out there.
Mhm.
And how like impacting is it on my morning slash my day when that isn't the case, right? A really small example.
It makes me wonder, as you give that example, if we if we need to revisit whether or not all entitlement is bad. Because now I'm starting to change my thinking a little bit, kind of based
Okay.
on what we're talking about. Like, I don't know that all entitlement is bad. I think you can categorize it. If in this instance you have done the skill building and, lived as a responsible adult to earn the money to spend with your free will to buy a motorcycle, I feel like that is healthy and functional. And the result is that you're entitled to travel within one gas tank, right? Wherever you want to go. That, like, you have that as an entitlement. On the other hand, if you turned around and gave me, who doesn't have a motorcycle license, a gift of a motorcycle and said, "Hey, go ahead and start your journey," and then you see me the very next day wearing leathers and Harley stuff, and I'm like completely changed my identity, like that I think is a negative. I didn't do anything. I just got the bike. And now all of a sudden my whole identity is
Mhm.
right. So it's like on those polar extremes, I kind of feel like maybe we do need to address whether or not all entitlement is bad.
I think talking about just what the definition of entitlement is then might be helpful because to me, I don't feel like there's any circumstances in which the universe, the world, or myself or anybody else owes me that motorcycle. Even if I went and got a job and earned the money and saved it and was, like I don't feel like there's
Right.
any situation in which I'm owed that. I don't think I'm owed much. Um, and I think that so not getting political, but to bring up, the constitution of our country, the standards established there are I don't kill you, you don't kill me. I don't steal from you, you don't steal from me.
You're
Right? I
entitled to
don't
life and
I don't
property.
violate your rights, you don't violate mine. And basically that just says that you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't violate the God-given rights of someone else, you know?
Mhm.
Um so without getting political about it, um I would be very much against someone taking something of mine away and giving it to someone else without my permission, right? I would be
Your
very much against it.
motorcycles?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have one
Ex
motorcycle, okay? Let's
ex
not make this
yeah.
Chris before everybody's like,
Extracting your
"Oh,
wealth from you.
Randy's rich. It's easy to talk
Yeah.
about this." That is not the case.
You know what? So I have an interesting thought for you. So and I'll just come out and say I'm more politically conservative. Um, so it's very interesting moving from a liberal state to a conservative-esque state and not feeling like my money's just being flushed down a toilet into an incinerator all the time. And it's a very interesting kind of realization like, oh, I don't feel like I'm wasting my money all the time. My local government's not just my money to heat some random building that's empty anymore. Like it's a very interesting feeling to be like, so Georgia's max income tax is 5%. And it's stepped up like California. The first amount's 1%, second amount's 2%, right? And so your max unit spending is 5%, and that's sales tax and income tax. And so it's interesting to see my taxes on my pay stubs and be like, oh, I'm not giving 14% to the government this month. Where's that money going? And it's a very interesting feeling to kind of not feel like it's just being pissed away somewhere, and actually like it's actually a smaller people's or smaller environment, smaller group of people need less they need to extract less from me on a biweekly basis. It's a very interesting kind of feeling, and it's a very similar feeling with a lot of things in life, actually, with law and with like law and order and with gun rights and with all these things. It's like you don't feel like you're being attacked the entire time in Georgia, but for like your political views and your social views aren't the outliers in this state. At least mine aren't the outliers. They're the middle of the group here, and it's just like, but in California, it was always like, don't talk about guns because they don't like guns here.
Because
Because
you
you're
never
you're
know who you're
weirdos. You
going to
like
be
guns.
talking to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
dude, it's legit. Like there is really no gun laws here, and it's just like, oh well, and nobody cared, and it's just like, it's great, and it's just, and you like guns, go, I like guns too. It's like, and there's no
Yeah.
weird stigma to it, and it's a very refreshing kind of feeling to not have that all the time.
Yeah. So coming back a little bit to the definition then of entitlement, Chris, um, if we think of those basic rights as being inalienable, right? As you know, you can't, you as a person cannot take away the rights of another person because those rights were given or God given, right? Whether you believe in God or not, right?
Whatever. Right.
That's the
Right.
foundation upon which we're built. In terms of that, then everything else outside of those basic things technically falls into a convenience, right? Because you're not entitled by God to a washing machine. You're entitled to be able to figure out a way to clothe yourself and wash yourself without the burden of other people imposing something on you that keeps you from being able to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're talking about freedom. And as free people, we are entitled to choose convenience as a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But if we choose it as a lifestyle, it becomes that slippery slope that's harder to get out of.
I see where you're going. I
You know what
think,
I'm saying?
yeah, and I think it's important to say that, like, if we agree that that not all convenience is negative, and if we also can agree that entitlement exists on a spectrum from healthy to corrosive, then it creates a very complex situation where not everything is going to be a one-to-one interlock between
Mm.
whether or not a convenience is a direct road to a negative entitlement. But I think we can also say that there is room for responsible convenience, right? Like
Mhm.
taking Jordan's example of like that feeling of inclusivity, that feeling of relief, be having that be refreshing. Like, yeah, it's convenient to not have to like watch your dollars leave your paycheck for some amorphous cause that you had no influence over every 2 weeks, right? Like, whether or not that generates a corrosive entitlement in Jordan or not, I think you can pretty clearly see that it's not like an unhealthy thing for him or for the people
Mhm.
around him or for his family or anything like that. So I almost
Well,
wonder like,
but for you, so in like along the lines, right?
yeah,
But Jordan's in Georgia now, and he was in California. The only difference is that there's a state border, right? And we have
Mhm.
different leadership in those different
well,
states.
there's also the difference of personal preference.
Okay. But Jordan has those inalienable rights we talked about
Yeah,
in
sure.
California as much as he had them in Georgia. I think it's decidedly inconvenient that he had to move across the country to find a place where he could afford to live and exercise his rights as a free
Yeah.
person, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
convenient at
That's
all,
yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
My rights are determined where my feet land, right? Because you see that in Nevada versus California. Nevada has little to no gun laws. California has all the gun laws. You can drive across the border and buy things you want to buy, and then bring them back to California, hypothetically, allegedly. Like it's just
California is a really interesting
it's an
situation,
island, though,
right?
right? Yeah.
Like it's a really interesting
Yeah.
situation, and I agree. There's a depth to that conversation. I don't want to get mucked up too much
Yeah.
in the state to state
We can
politics.
save that for like a five-parter down the
Yeah,
line.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. On an actual bourbon club, and we're already half a bottle in. We're like, let
Right,
Yeah.
me tell
right.
you.
Yeah.
Gonna have to
But yeah,
that'll be
but where
like
my
a
feet are, it shouldn't matter.
yeah.
That's right. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. And I think that to not overstate it, I think you should be able to live where you want, even surrounded by neighbors that don't like your choices, but that shouldn't
Yeah.
have any impact on whether or not you are free to make those choices.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
it's also then we can also like that safety versus freedom, right? That Benjamin Franklin quote. Because you can
Yeah,
start going down that road too. Like
yeah.
you give up safety for freedom, you deserve neither. Like, and that's California. And that's like
Yeah.
people want to feel safe. People want to feel safe all the time, and
I
they'll give
think the
up
reason why that
a COVID.
I think
Yeah,
the reason why that quote though works particularly, right, is because to give something up is the opposite of freedom,
yeah.
right? So, you know,
Look at COVID, right? COVID was the big test of that, and people gave up all their freedom
yeah.
for the illusion of, to feel safe. And then yeah, that's a if you start thinking about all the restrictions that were implemented in California, especially California, New York, California, especially, like for the illusion of feeling safe. Like there's a lot was given up for that.
Well, it wasn't presented as an illusion, right? It
Yeah,
was presented as a stone cold fact. You're
yeah,
sacrificing yours and everyone else's safety by not adhering to these,
yeah.
to these policies or whatever. And like I said, obviously there's a lot of roads we can go down with that conversation too. But I don't want to lose the end
Hmm.
of the quote, and
Yeah.
where it goes. Um, because I think that empathy is actually the solution. And I think when we start going through this quote and we talk about a thing that could be a slippery slope to entitlement, and entitlement starts to drain empathy. First of all, do we agree that entitlement drains empathy?
Hmm. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think the bad type of entitlement will,
yeah.
right? Like that, like
But
unearned.
empathy for who?
Well, right.
Because
Empathy in
yeah,
general has to be for others, right?
yeah.
It has to be. Um, Empathy is being able to feel what others are feeling with them.
But
Apathy.
others as in who though?
Well,
The world in
any
general, or my friends, or my family,
well,
or
this is probably a place
yeah,
where you and I don't 100% agree
yeah.
on this particular concept, but I think that every person born is entitled to the same rights that I'm entitled to. Again, I don't believe that their rights supersede mine. I
Hmm.
don't believe their rights go under mine. I believe everyone's rights are on par with everyone else's rights. And you cannot take away someone else's rights. So I think our
Yeah.
problem, and then I'll jump over to you, Chris, in one sec, but I think our problem is that we get the word right and the word entitlement and we make them the same thing. And I don't believe that rights and entitlements are the same.
No, yeah,
Yeah. I really like that distinction. That's really cool. Rights and entitlements are definitely not the same thing. And I think a lot of times where people get hung up on, because I completely agree, like your rights are yours and mine are mine, and as long as we're not taking ones away from each other, then great. I think where we struggle societally is that whether it's now, and I'm sure, millions of times in the past, you run into situations where rights are defined differently by different groups of people who have different philosophies and believe in different things. And what's a right to one person is meaningless to the other. And that's where the conflict gets. I mean, an extreme example, certainly, but like if there if there was such a simple way of just saying like these are all of the rights and we all agree to them and they're never in conflict with one another, that's nirvana, right? Like that's the ideal unreachable state.
hmm,
Yeah. So from that platform, right, when I think about empathy, my empathy should be for anyone else, right? I should be able to feel for anyone else. But I think also that as a human being and as a, straight up honest feeling, when I see people who have made a lifestyle out of entitlement, it makes it more difficult for me to feel empathy for them,
Yeah, sure.
right? Especially because I believe that in a situation where resources suddenly become scarce, I'm going to be one of the people who has to provide for the rest of the village, right? Because I've spent the time knowing how to do that, right? I know how to defend my family and I know how to defend you. I know how to seek out resources and obtain them, right? I know how to share and how to, divide things and how to ration things, right? So I think that I think though that when you take that responsibility, when you accept it and when you develop it, and it blossoms, I think it brings empathy along with it. I think you learn how to see past the idea that, yeah, it might bother me that you have developed a life of entitlement, but where did that idea come from? Right? It used to be an outlier. It used to be a point of shame that someone else had to take care of you. But if you're if you're in a third generation of situation where you've never had to work, that is a disservice to you. Like, how are you supposed to fully develop yourself as a human and as a person? Like, how are you supposed to do that? Who's going to teach you those skills? And do you even care to learn them?
Yeah. We don't have to,
You
right?
don't have to.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I think it ties back into the first statement of the quote, right? Eventually you don't have to even think about it. And once you don't have to think about it, you're owed it. Imagine it gets taken away. Right?
Yeah.
Louis C.K. told this joke one time when they were first getting Wi-Fi on airplanes. And he said he was sitting next to a guy and the stewardess told them that Wi-Fi was up. And so they were like, oh, this is crazy. So they got on their laptops and they pulled it up and they were watching Wi-Fi, watching YouTube videos and stuff. And then it went down. And he said the guy next to him was like slamming his computer shut, like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And Louis C.K., obviously I don't agree with everything this guy says, but I thought it was really, it was a great perception. He said, how are you so angry about something that you didn't even know existed an hour ago? And now you're so entitled to it that you can be
Right.
angry that you don't have it anymore.
Right. Right. You're in
That's
a
that
tube.
slippery slope to me, right?
Yeah.
The month before that, no one would even think you could have the internet on the plane. An hour
Yeah.
before that guy got on, he didn't know it was a possibility. Then you have it, and in less than 10 minutes, you learn that you are owed that feature because it is a thing. How easy is it? And maybe the answer, Chris, is that it's an individual thing, not necessarily that it's a situational thing. You know what I mean? Maybe that's where it arrives, like how the
Yeah.
individual decides to interpret convenience, how they decide
Yeah.
to honor it, how they
Yeah.
decide to implement it is also what decides if it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because
Yep.
because
Yep.
according to the definition, you should
Yep.
be able to have any convenience, anything you want, any sort of freedom that you can imagine, as long as it doesn't take away the rights of someone else, right? I should be able to own 1,000 guns and carry them around on me all the time, like the old cartoon characters, because I haven't shot you,
Hmm.
right? I don't get to get punished for your fear of my potential future crime. But you feel entitled to live in a society where you never have to see a gun. But that impinges on my rights. So any right that infringes on someone else's rights is by nature illegal to the Constitution because you've just done something that's repugnant to the law. You have violated my rights for your feeling of security or for your entitlements or for whatever those things are. That's why I think the conversation is so complicated, is because it's left to the individual to interpret. And where does the individual get that information?
Hmm.
Who's who's teaching us how to be good people?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
You know, and I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thoughts about it, but I don't really know. You know, so I think that's what made this quote so interesting. Um, and I think it was one. I think I feel differently about it now than I did when we first started the conversation.
Yeah. Same here.
Um, still open to kind of chewing on it and pondering it. Um, I'd be interested to hear anybody listening to this thinks about that too. Like how did this hit you? Do you think it's a more personal thing? Do you think it's a more conceptual thing? Do you think it's accurate? Let us know. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. As you can see we're all kind of just thinking. Everybody's like, what do we do now?
Yeah, man, that's like the thrust of this podcast. I think that's why it's so compelling. Is that like these are things that I think we're all three very interested in spending time unpacking and thinking and determining how our life philosophy applies to it, or if it should be adjusted. And we're not claiming to be experts here. We just want to think through it and understand ourselves better as it is applied through that lens.
Absolutely. So coming up on time, we're going to wrap up with one last thought. The end of the quote talks about hardship. Convenience seems like it's there to mitigate or eliminate hardship, right? On some level. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can see that.
I think so. Yeah.
So if that's what it is, um, then I guess the good or bad of it would be, is it eliminating necessary hardships, and how much hardship is actually necessary in your life, right? As an individual.
Yeah,
And I think that
self-inflicted hardships. Yeah,
right. I mean, right, of any kind. I mean, maybe not though, because this whole podcast is about, what's on the other side of suffering or on the other
Yeah.
side of hardship a little bit. Um, Without those things, we don't have the podcast. We don't have, well, at least I don't have who I am as an individual now, at all without those hardships, right? And those hardships would have been completely eliminated if there were conveniences in their place to smooth them over at the time. I'd be just a completely different person. For good
Mm.
or bad, I don't know, right? I don't know. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's probably important to think about, you know, uh, do those conveniences become more of a bad thing if they smooth over the hardships that are potentially the catalyst for your growth and transition, your transformation as a person? Um, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
really interesting. We could dive deeper into that. But obviously, we're as
Hardship is
we're
a
wrapping
virtue.
up. Yeah, yeah, and maybe we should. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
next episode is diving deeper into that. But whew, man, as always, just an amazing conversation. I love your guys' perspective. Thank you so much for the honest approach. I love also that we've gotten to the place where there's a little bit more silence in the conversation sometimes while we're thinking. I intentionally don't cut those out in editing because I think that everybody is the same, right? We're all trying to think through this and figure it out. And it feels like it keeps the actual natural pace. So I hope that you pick up on that and that you're
Mhm.
enjoying it. But this has been another episode of the Sweeter After Difficulty podcast. Thank you so much for being in here. Please keep coming, keep listening, share these out, subscribe, help our algorithm out. But whatever you do, take the ideas that we're talking about here and just think about them. Find out how you actually feel about these things. Dig deep, turn over every rock inside. No one's going to know. And you'll be able to, maybe come out with some new information about yourself or about the, people or about how you feel about things that you haven't had before. That's my chief hope with this platform and with these conversations. And as always, just grateful, Jordan and Chris, for you guys being here to help drive these conversations along. So
Love it.
thank you, fellas.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
for
thank you.
everybody else, we will see you next Friday on Sweeter After Difficulty.